أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وسهل مخرجهم واحشرنا معهم وارزقنا شفاعتهم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الدين عند الله الإسلام. To Allah Azza wa Jal, the most accepted, the most beloved deen is only and only Islam, Islam Aziz. On the series captioned Islamic Humanism, in our previous episode we have thrown light on an attribute of Allah Azza wa Jal which is unveiled, disclosed, found, seen, exhibited in every human being, provided when he is in the nascent stage of humanity or a human being, that is when he is an infant of 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, maximum 4 or 5 years. And that attribute was of Allah Azza wa Jal, which we see in every human being, is of reconciliation. He is soft, tender, filled with mercy in heart, accommodation for friends, accommodation for nature, even if they become his foe or enemy or have severe relations. For example, we see the 2 children fighting of that age. For the sake of them, their parents taking their sides, they sever the relations which may last up to 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or even more. But the attribute of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is seen in every human being in that stage of nascent, pure human being form, it is the infant. We see that the 2 children who are fighting each other, within seconds they became friends and are playing. Because in them there is the jalwa, the radiance of Allah's sifat, more prompt, because they are in the nascent and pure form stage of human being. As we see, Allah has created all in His image. Image here is image of fitra, the image of attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. So this was in the previous part, and this is the part that we see of this attribute in the end part of Dua Kumail, where Imam alayhi salam says, Ya Sari al-Rida Iqfir liman la yamliku illa dua. Oh, the one who reconciles very easily, within no time. We find that when a person severs relations in that stage of life of infant, we see how quick are they to reconcile. This is the attribute which has been reflected as a radiant and radiance of Allah Azza wa Jal. Now we will look for another attribute of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is the one we find in every human being. So in the first trait, character, we need to obey Allah Azza wa Jal in reconciling, in ameliorating, in patching up the misunderstandings by open talks in humane and ilahi methods of forgiveness to each other, because that is good for health of both of the parties concerned. It is not in favor of any one of them. And until we reconcile, we are obeying Allah Azza wa Jal under Atiullah wa Ati Rasulah wa ulil amri minkum. When we are reconciling, we are in the path of obeying Allah, because this is the attribute of Allah that we have discovered, which was in us by nature, by default, and on that we have practiced, means that we have obeyed Allah. So we are in obedience of Allah. Until we do not reconcile our friends, until we increase the problems, then on whose obedience we become? Of whose servants we become? Do we become servants of Allah in the servitude of Allah Azza wa Jal, or we are serving shaitan? Because shaitan is the enemy of all human beings. No human being is enemy of any human being. Shaitan is the enemy of all human beings. So this is the trait to make human beings divide and fight, creating misunderstandings, whispers, false allegations. Allegations, even if they are being true, but if one party comes for reconciliation, they should reflect to the obedience of sifat ilahiyya, attribute of Allah, of reconciliation under Ya Sariya Rida Ighfir liman la yamliku illa dua. In our present episode, we are going to uncover another attribute, and that is, we see the nature of Iblis, Shaitan, who wants to divide us. It has its own way, and Allah, in saving human being for good characters, for good attributes, has his own way. Now we have to reflect in both of these, which do we follow. We see that to build relations, for connecting human beings, we take 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 40 years, 50 years. But to dislocate them, to damage them, to destroy them, it hardly takes fraction of a second, nothing more than a fraction of a second. So the friendship of all these 10, 20, 1 year, 2 year, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, all is washed away. Everything what you have done good to your friend and whatever your friend has done good to you, it all gets washed away within a fraction of a second of a long standing, say of 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 50 years even. So this is how everything goes into vain. This is the trait of Shaitan that breaks the long-standing friendships even. But let us reflect on the attribute of Allah Azawajal. We find Allah Azawajal, if a person has been a sinner for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 30 years, 50 years, 80 years, till the last moment of his death, where as Quran Majid says, Surah An-Nisa, ayat number 18, Laysat tawbatun idha hadar al-maut. The door of Tawbah is open till a man sees his death. The death event, that's called in Urdu Alam-e-Jankani, in which one sees the result of his life and he sees the place where he is going after that. So once the paper is out and once the result has come out, at that time the door of Tawbah is closed. This is ayat. This is Mokam ayat. We get 2 lessons from this. Number 1, because none of us know the time of our death and when that Hazar al-Maut will come, for that reason, every time sitting, walking, working, in office, in college, in workplace, on the streets, at home, talking with any of your relatives, friends, those with whom you have severe relations, every time, every event, just do astaghfirullah rabbi wa atubu ilayh, or at least astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh, or at least astaghfirullah. Because the most beloved thing to Allah is inna Allah yuhibbut tawwabin. Even if you are not a sinner, but because Allah loves tawwabin, you do tawbah, repentance. Is it not that simple? Don't wait that if we do any sin, then only we will do tawbah. And this is the philosophy and meaning of tawbah of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They were not doing because of ajizi. They were not doing any tawbah for their sins, but they were doing tawbah because they have known that inna Allah yuhibbut tawwabin. So nobody can be more beloved to Allah than Ahlul Bayt. So that is the reason they were always had been saying astaghfirullah rabbi wa atubu ilayh, and the duas for astaghfar and tawbah and anaba we find in Saifa Kamila, Saifa Alawiya, Mafatil Jinan, all these. This is the background of these duas. Now, we have covered the first trait of human being, which is found as nafse ammara of shaitan, that he dislodges and breaks the relationships which were built in the course of years of time. but they're going to be washed out all in a fraction of a second, right? Now we reflect to how is that behavior and attribute in Allah Azza. We found here that a sinner who has done sins for life, say 30 years, 40 years, 80 years, and just before reaching to the stage of experiencing the death terminal point, Jankani, if he says Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh with core of his sincere heart, then all his sins are they are washed away in the same way Shaitan has washed away all good deeds of friendships between two friends and make them fight each other. And here Allah Azza wa Jal cleans the record from all sins in just a fraction of a second. To explain, we can give a picturesque sight of the event to make it understand properly with a simile, with a metaphor. Metaphor means it is not to be applied in reality. Simile is not to be applied in reality. It is only one to make one understand. So don't take me wrong in chapter of Tawheed when I say that Allah's mercy over a sinful person, a sinner, looks for an event that we can express in Urdu language in a better way, because now I'm not getting its proper parallel in the English language. So for that I am compromising with my mother tongue, that Allah की रहमत एक गुनाहगार बंदे पर तड़पती रहती है कि कब वो मेरे पास तरफ पलट कर आए और मैं कब उसको बख्श देकर अपने रहमत की जगह जाए पनाह अता करूँ, give his place in my mercy. So, as we have said, we have to obey Allah Azza wa Jal under Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu atiullaha wa atiur rasulahu wa ulil amri minkum, and in that in atiullah we have to be quick in reconciliation, as we have seen in the attribute with two children of 2 years or 3 years or maximum 4 years of age. So we have to see whether we do follow Allah in reconciliation each other, or we give over us victory to Iblis by dislodging, breaking our relations. Whom we want to make victorious upon us? We want to make Shaitan victorious upon us, or we want to be stronger in the servitude of Allah and obey Allah by defeating Shaitan by reconciliation among each other. In the same way, when a good is done for years, that gets washed out in a fraction of a second, right? This is the trait we have with our nafs ammara from Iblis, from Shaitan. Do we want to make Shaitan victorious over us, or we want to make victorious Allah over our nafs, so that we be in a good servitude with sifat ilahiyya? And that is, even if one has done throughout the life any wrongs to us, has done any wrong to us, even then at one time or one place, when he turns back to normalize the relations, to ameliorate the relations, to reconcile the relations, what the attribute of Allah dictates us here now to obey and follow Allah? Is it, should we not meet? Should we not reconcile? Should we not patch up our injuries? Or, as Allah's mercy, we have used the word तड़पती रहती है कि कब बंदा आ जाए. Shall my friend not look with the same degree in obedience of Allah, that when my friend with whom our relations have been violated has come down, even with the झूठे मुँह, चलो आज हम एक हो जाएं, हम एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे आ जाएं, हम दोस्ती को अपने रिवाइव करें, रिवाइव आवर रिलेशंस, रिवाइव आवर फ्रेंडशिप. You mean, will this not please Allah? In the next episode, we will consider and throw light on the ajr wa sawab on those who make reconciliations between the two friends who have severed their relations, and vice versa on the same subject. These are the requirements of Islamic humanism. These are the values Islam holds for humanity. Since he is Khalifa of Allah, all attributes of Allah Azawajal are as Khilafa, as behind, as by following, as by nature, as by default of nature, are present in every human being. Only thing we need somebody to tickle them, make them aware. With this intention, this present episode has surrounded. Inshallah, I think we will take lesson from itaat of Allah, itaat of Sifat Allah Azawajal. We will try to disclose, awaken in us one by one in each episode the attributes of Allah that are inherent in us. What we need only is to unearth them, to discover them, to extract them. As in the language of metallurgy, there is the extraction of ores, dressing of ores, then we get the end product available for humanity. So are the attributes of Allah Azawajal present in every human being, in every creature, in fact, at large. Only we need to uncover them at their proper time, at their proper place. Proper time means for reconciliation. Every time is the time of reconciliation, because we don't know when our death is going to come. So every time as we have to do tawbah, because we can't wait till we see Alam-e-Jankani, because we don't know when our last moment is going to come. It means the benchmark meaning of this ayat is that we have to do tawbah every time. And in the same way, to reconcile our relations with our friends, we need not wait for the time. For every time we should say that this is the time and event I was waiting for to reconcile, to meet, to have normal relations, to normalize. This is the message of Islam. This is the message of following in obedience the attributes of Allah Azawajal. Allah give us tawfiq that we understand Allah's tawheed, Allah's sifat in us, and try to be in the qurba of Allah, in nearness of Allah. What is meant by qurbatan ilallah? Qurbatan ilallah is the qurba, the nearness in which Allah's attributes are reflected from us. Allah's attributes are seen from us. Allah's attributes that we obey. Otherwise, if we are praying 5 times a day for years, but if His attributes are not reflected in us, then where we have been in qurbatan ilallah? That is a big question. That will be from hereafter. We will continue in our next episode. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajam wa sahil makhrajam wa shunna mahum warzuqna shafa'atahum. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma kun li waliyika al-hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala abaihi fi hadhihi as-sa'a wa fi kulli sa'a waliyan wa hafidha wa qa'idan wa nasira wa dalilan wa 'ayna hatta tuskinhum ardaka taw'a wa tumatti'uhu fiha tawila. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajam wa sahil makhrajam wa shurna ma'ahum.